So welcome everyone. Welcome for this interview. We do something today that we don't often do on the channel. And the first thing you must have noticed is that I'm not speaking the usual language. So a small reminder for the people that are with me. Si vous ne comprenez pas du tout ce que je suis en train de dire, c'est très facile. Vous cliquez pour activer les sous-titres. La raison pour laquelle je parle en anglais, vous allez la comprendre tout de suite. The reason why I'm speaking in English today is because I have the pleasure to have with me Dr. Mike Chi. Welcome, Mike.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have me. I'm really happy to be here.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks for the trust. Thanks again for letting me review early the RetroTINK 4K. Today, we're going to talk about the conception, and we're going to talk about the engineering journey that you had to go through from concept to actually creation of the RetroTINK line. I'm very interested to understand and to share with the people a bit how it started and how you went so far as having now one of the lead products, if not the lead product, for retro gaming upscaling. Could you please introduce yourself for the people that don't know you, and maybe give us a bit of your background and what led you to create the RetroTINK products in the first place?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Well, first of all, again, thanks for taking an interest in this very niche stuff. So I'm Mike. I'm an electrical engineer by trade. Most of my background is in analog circuit design, specifically for low frequency, medical sensors. So relatively simple stuff, actually. And that's where I spent the bulk of my education and the bulk of my career, is basically building these little wearable device health monitor systems. And, wow, it's been probably started this RetroTINK stuff in 2017. So it's now, time flies. It's like, what, 6 years now, 7 years almost? Mm-hmm. But basically, I'm sure being a software engineer, you've been kind of in the same spot where it's like, okay, I've been doing the same thing for over and over again for many years. I just need to find some project to expand your mind, get something because you get tired of doing the same thing over again, right? So in 2017, I had a little bit more free time. Work was getting a little better. I'm like, hey, I haven't played video games in, at that point, 10, 15 years. How do I get my like Super Mario on the NES fix, right? And I wanted to do it on a CRT, and it's the old joke, get up high. So I started digging into these Pi emulators and figured, well, you can build a simple adapter to output composite video from the Pi or component video to a CRT. So I built that, and that's kind of where it all started. That's where the then from there went from Pi hats for a little bit, then to say, okay, I'm not exactly happy with the Pi experience. I want the real hardware now. So how do I get real hardware on on the modern TV? So then went to the upscalers, and then just from there, one thing led to another, and it builds on each other.
But did you notice there was a gap in the market? So as yourself, you wanted to start playing again, so to use your upscalers, and you noticed that there was a price gap that was really huge, because at the time, I guess in 2007, if you wanted to buy an upscaler, it was already very niche, but it was more niche in the broadcasting professional domain. So basically, you didn't find a tool that suits you, so you decided to build it by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure it's a story that you've probably had the same urge. But yeah, at the time, I think 2017, the OSSC was out, the FrameMeister out. Both are good products. The FrameMeister I kind of didn't pay too much attention to it because it seemed pretty complicated and it was hard to get. The OSSC was a good product, but the problem is I really wanted to just connect composite video from a Nintendo. At that point, I didn't know about RGB mods. I had never heard of SCART cable. I'm like, okay, I have a yellow wire. I need to upscale it with very low latency to my TV. How do I do that? And that's where that first RetroTINK 2X got built.
Okay, so you want to play video game, that's the trigger, and you start asking yourself, but you're alone, right? You don't know about signal processing. You know it professionally, but in another aspect, but you're not a developer. Did you design before hardware? Where this approach to engineering creation process of the product started? How did you start structuring that being solo, basically?
The nice thing, one of the things I like to tell engineers is, whatever skill you learn, it's very applicable to many, many fields. So, I was building these little medical devices, but a lot of it's the same thing. You look at all the chips available that convert analog signals to digital signals. You need a microprocessor to control everything. And then you have various ports, right? that handle the input and output. So from a theoretical standpoint, building an upscaler is very similar to building many, many other devices. So it was just a matter of research. Okay, I'm going to look at all the possible video chips. I'm going to start building test boards. And, we figure out some chips don't work. They don't handle 240p or they handle it badly. I found a bunch of chips that weren't good. And then, after a few months of research, I found a chip that actually did exactly what I wanted to do. And then it's just, you read the data sheets carefully, you make a PCB. So you put the chips on your own board, and then you write all the firmware to control it, to make it do stuff. And that's essentially how I got there. And, it's in a sense, a part of it, there is some creativity, but a lot of it's formulaic. Because, like I said, you build hardware devices for one thing, and it's very similar to building a hardware device for something else. And it's stuff that, some that I've done before, and someone else that has hardware experience that says, hey, you need to solve this problem, would probably approach it pretty similarly.
And did you have already an experience with the software part, or was that something that you had also to learn by yourself?
So a joke is I don't write software. I'm very, very bad at writing software. There's definitely there's firmware. So in a sense, that's the software part of it. But for the 2X, the firmware is pretty simple. It's basically, how do we configure the chip to do what we need to do, which is acquire composite, do the line doubling, configure the HDMI transmitter to output correctly. I wouldn't say it's anything like what you do. A lot of the firmware is basically just scripts to make the chips do what the data sheet tells you want it to do.
Okay, I see. So the very first product was basically more cope to the hardware in a way, so it simplified the startup. The 2X was already quite fast a success. So you had visibility, at least in the scene, because you came with a product that was solving a problem at a price that was basically not there before.
Yeah, so I think so. I think the 2X found a niche because, again, you guys probably don't know the pain, but most of us here on this side of the world, we're just using composite or maybe S-video. Yeah. And that was a very underserved niche, I think, at that time. So that's why I think the 2X was successful.
And from the 2X, how did you decide to go one step more and build the 5X? Because then you had to change a lot also in the engineering process, in the technology you were using. So it was another learning curve, I guess, and another process in engineering.
Yeah, definitely. When I did the 2X, I didn't know much about, it was my first attempt at building an upscaler. I was, at that point, the scene was already pretty well developed. You had the OSSC, the FrameMeister, you had a lot of people, the retro gaming, community was already pretty well developed at that point, but I was new. So I didn't know about all these gaps fully, right? For example, after the 2X came out, obviously the big problem was, hey, most of these upscalers used a really bad form of deinterlacing called Bob deinterlacing. And the only product that could do anything better was a FrameMeister, which again was difficult to get and expensive. There was a problem of resolution changes. You have dropouts, and that was something that no gaming-oriented upscaler could solve. And then, of course, we wanted higher resolution, better video quality, sharper pixels, better CRT effects, all that. And then, so I got my brain going. Okay, it's like the 2X was actually pretty simple. 2X was, hey, it's all stuff that I've done before. Even though I didn't touch anything, I've never done anything video upscaling. I'd done the process of putting some chips together and writing some control firmware. For the 5X, it's like, okay, to solve all these gaps or all these unmet problems that we faced, we really needed to use a more advanced architecture. So then I had to learn how to do FPGA design, because now we can't just rely on buying an off-the-shelf chip and hoping the chip does everything for you. We need to have our own custom logic to handle all of that. The software that controls all that on the firmware now becomes much, much more complicated because it has to handle a lot more use cases, has to configure that FPGA. So I would say, yeah, that was definitely going from the 5X. Going from the 2X to the 5X, actually, I think was like much, much bigger jump in learning and complexity than going from the 5X and the 4K. In a lot of ways, going from the 5X to the 4K is a much smaller gap. It's just the 4K has everything the 5X does, but it's more powerful. But the 5X compared to the 2X is a completely different way of designing and developing.
That's also what I thought when I saw, and when you discussed about the architecture, I thought, yeah, it's a logical bridge and an extension, more performant extension of the 5X. But At the same time, and it must have had an impact in your engineering process, I guess, you had to target to cost. So you could not just build a device that was doing everything perfect. How did you handle the right balance between the target cost? Did you first put more or less a window of what would be acceptable to put on the market? Or did you say, okay, all in, I go with something reasonable, all in, something that I can industrialize, but I go with the logic of building the best product? Or was it still in a way engineered target to cost to do something the most efficient to the price? And the price is anyway, even with the current price of the RetroTINK 4K, it's a big question for a lot of people. They say, what? So
Yeah, for sure.
I guess that still in your engineering process, this cost was thought early, right? Because the tech, you basically knew where you were going with the tech.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, with the 5X, definitely, efficiency and cost to functionality was pretty high in my mind. I would say in the 5X it was like, okay, let's try to build an efficient design, because I didn't really know, what the market was like, or what I could actually make work. So I was like, I don't know anything about FPGA design, so it doesn't make sense, for one thing, to get a very expensive FPGA that I just don't know how to use. So I got a relatively simple one.
$10.
And then, yeah, the mythical $10 FPGA. Yeah. Well, it's also, it's also, using simpler parts is good if you're a beginner, because they're easier to work with, right? If you get a complicated part, then you're learning a new skill and you're learning how to make a very complicated piece work. So I think that helps. So on the 5X, yeah, definitely there was a constraint of, hey, let's keep things as simple as possible so as to not overwhelm like the process. And I think that was a good call. It was a good call for an unexpected reason, because as you know, during COVID, the parts shortage just went crazy, right? And if I gotten a more complicated part, more expensive part, I probably wouldn't have been able to produce anything. But because I had a relatively simple part, was still able to get it, and I was able to stock a good number of it, and that's why we were able to stay in stock the entire time. So that was a good call, but it was unexpected.
But it also did, this whole COVID part must have had an impact also, because you started getting the idea of the RetroTINK 4K, I guess, right when this shortage was starting. So furthermore, the cost must have been a big. Is it even feasible? We saw products like the OSS Pro that were delayed by 2, 3, 4 years because of shortages, and because the design was done before there was actually a problem with the supply. So for you also thought of your engineering process with that in mind?
For the 4K, you mean, definitely, it's actually, these past few years have been a pretty strange time for developers, not just in this niche, but, across all industries. It's like, okay, we have to worry about, for the first time in a very long time, probably for many engineers, it's the first time in their career that they actually really have to worry about supply chains. But, when I was starting out the 4K, it started probably early 2022. It wasn't super worried. I'll tell you why. First of all, I was like, there's a good chance I may never get this to work, so who cares? And two, I was like,
Okay.
I figured by the time I get this thing to work, the supply chain will go back to normal anyways. And I think I was right on that one, because by the time the 4K did hit the market, which was just a few months ago, you can get the parts you need now. So I would say, the only real difference between the OSSC Pro and the 4K in terms of supply chain is that I would just happen to be luckier that I started the design process earlier. Design process later, so the timing worked out. I wouldn't say it's any sort of good planning. It's just that one came down to luck.
Okay, nice. Well, the luck made the product pretty nice. So good luck on that. Is
Thank you.
there in the challenges that you had to face while developing the whole line, not necessarily the RetroTINK 4K, but is there a particular achievement that you're really proud of having made and surpassed, or learned, or anything that you take from that it particularly add value for you?
That is a good question. I would say that the two things that I was really proud of doing. The first thing was the motion adaptive deinterlacer. That was for the 5X, and I actually built that pretty early on. Because for a long time, we were all thinking, motion adaptive deinterlacing is very out of the reach of developers just us hobby developers. You really need to be a big company to do something. But, it turned out that if you just wanted to build a very simple one that was good for retro games, which actually happens to work out, because for gaming, obviously you want low lag. So which means your deinterlacer is actually pretty simple. It's only looking at it's only looking at like the current field and the previous field. So you're not looking at a lot of data, which means the processing is simple. And I ended up getting that working pretty early on. So I was pretty proud. I was like, okay, this was my first attempt. I was 4 months into learning how to design with FPGAs, and I got a deinterlacer working. I was very proud of that. Other than that, I'd say the other thing I was super proud of is on the 4K. There's still some quirks. I would say it's not perfect yet, but basically the way that the 4K can analyze an analog signal and say, hey, this is the sample rate that the console's running at, and then apply all the optimal sampling, detect the phase automatically. Because I think that really lowers the barrier for people to use these advanced modes, because, before you have to figure out, oh, hey, here's the sample rate. All right, now I have to calibrate the phase, and now I have to make sure the aspect ratio is correct. Well, the RetroTINK 4K, for the most part, there's edge cases where it fails, but in a lot of cases, it can just figure all that out for you. So I think then a lot more people can use that, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it does. It does make life much easier. It simplifies a very complex process. Also, the profile, the idea of having built-in profiles that go really further than what the 5X was doing. Well, first of all, you keep them when you firmware update. That's quite convenient. But also just the concept of making that open to the community, I think, was a game changer in the product. I hope long term, I think it will be something really that will have a big impact on the product long term.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of I think having the ability to share profiles is going to be huge. And I think a lot of that credit and the thanks has to go out to the community, especially people like Firebrand and Wobbly Pixels, who really did all the hard work of making the profiles. I think that adds a lot of functionality for people, because it's even for me, it's hard to figure out exactly how I should configure it. You've got so many different consoles, the knowledge for how to work them, like the sample rate and all these resolution lists. It's just all scattered across the internet. So having people that know all this, and then they're willing to take the time to consolidate this into profiles that people can just load up, is really nice.
In terms of engineering, it kind of makes sense. You build a platform, and then you let the specialists actually build on top of this platform with the capabilities. It's actually a pattern that is pretty often used for cloud, or you specialize your tool, but you're basically offering the ground platform and functionalities on top.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I try to do, is try to make the tool as easy to use as possible.
From the I don't know if you have other interests and passions outside of your work, because basically most people don't know that, but you're a one-man show, right? RetroTINK is basically yourself. Do you still have time to do something else outside of your main work and your secondary work? And does it have an impact on the way you create? And what's the influence of the free time? Do you detach completely from that and do something completely different, or are you basically in a loop of alternating between a lot of work?
That's a good question. And we are a one-man show, and we're let me give you a complicated answer. So it is a one-man show, and it isn't. So for example, first of all, my wife does this basically full time. So she's doing all the fulfillment, all the logistics. So that's already a huge amount of work. So it's not a one-man show in that sense. There's already two people. And I think, and a lot of the thanks goes out to people in the community that help me, especially the Discord crew. So that actually, I don't know if you're part of the Tink Discord, but that's been a huge help, just having people there be able to say, hey, someone's got a question, how to do this, I've got this problem, I don't know how to do this, and just be able to answer these questions, I think already saves me a lot of time. So I'm really grateful for them, because for many years I was just answering emails, and that actually took up like half my day. It's just answering very basic emails. So I am really grateful to them for helping me with that. So in that sense, no, we're definitely not a one-man show, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I would say over the past few months, it's pretty much basically been a complete loop of, hey, wake up, answer all the outstanding questions, and then try to do some development and testing, and then Yeah, I try to do work, the other job, but I've been lucky in the sense that that job hasn't been as demanding the past 1 or 2 years, and that's really allowed me to focus on the Tink side a lot more. But
So
now,
I can
otherwise, to answer sorry, to answer
no,
your
go
question
for it.
about other hobbies or playing games, right? I don't really have time. I don't know. Hopefully, you have time to play some games and relax. But these days, I wish I could sit down and play a little bit more. I just got an analog pocket like a month ago, and I was like, I powered up. It's like this is the coolest thing that I've gotten the past few years. But then I've probably spent less than half an hour playing on it in total.
Well, that was a question I asked to the community. I will put a link to your Discord in the description for the people that might be interested in joining. We also have a Discord for the channel. The description is always also in the descriptions of the video that not a lot of people read, unfortunately. And recurring questions when I said I was going to interview you was ask him if he's a game player, if he plays, and what does he think about playing on CRT. That's very interesting for us to understand if he would play. I see there's a PVM behind, but that's probably
Yeah.
to compare and to have a feedback on what's the expected signal supposed to look on a real CRT to reproduce masks, things like that. So you partially answered. Basically, free time for the moment is something that you're building on for the future. If I got that correct.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so. And right now, there's just like always seems like there's too many things to do. So, I'm sure you've probably felt this way at points in your life where you're just like, you sit down and you play and you feel like you're not restful. You're restless. Like I can't sit down and play. I need to stop and do something else. And that's kind of like where I've been stuck. I hope to get unstuck there. But to answer your other question about CRTs, yeah, I mean, I prefer much more prefer to play on a CRT. My personal favorite is I've got a consumer Trinitron FB310, which I really love. But I just sadly, I haven't been able to play on it much in the past year or so because the vertical deflection got a problem. So the image keeps shrinking up and down, and it drives me crazy. So I just don't use it now.
That kind of answers the question. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Do you happen to have a favorite console of yours? Something that you have as a reminder as a kid, or something a console that actually is closer to your heart than another one?
Oh yeah, definitely. The original Nintendo was the first console I ever got. I think that's definitely going to be my favorite of all time. And the nice thing I like about those Nintendo games is that they're so simple. Like, I can't stand modern games where you power it up and then it's like, all right, I'm going to download a 10 gigabyte update and then I'm going to sit through an hour-long tutorial and then maybe after this I'll get to do some gameplay, and then it's just too much for me. I need to turn it on and play, right? No one's got time for all that stuff.
Yeah, less and less. Yeah, may I follow you there? It's I guess I didn't ask your age, but you are closer to 40 than to 30, I guess.
I'm about to hit 39. Yeah, and it's pretty relatively soon. So definitely, getting getting there.
Don't worry, it doesn't hurt. I'm 42 and touching wood, it's okay. It doesn't hurt that much.
Yeah, good. It's still a good age to be, I think. It's just like you're at a point in your life where you're a bit more established, but obviously you have family obligations,
Mhm.
so you're more established, but you do have more responsibilities. But hopefully, you also, especially as the years go on, you have more time to sit down and just relax a little bit.
Well, creatively speaking, that's maybe just for me, but I realized that you actually build things in a different way when you start having more experience. You go less in all directions and you're more structured to what you want to achieve. You know better what you want to achieve, and this could definitely help in a project like yours, I guess, to be able to take one step back and not enter a rabbit hole that might be not worth it and things like that. You also learn engineering with time.
Of
You
course.
usually get better. You always learn. You learn something every day. So this never hurts,
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely. With experience, I think what you get is you get like an intuition or a sense of, hey, this just is probably not a good approach. Whereas, when you first start out, you'll like do 10 different things and 9 of them will be wrong, that you learn to recognize it because you just don't recognize that, hey, this is a bad approach. And so, yeah, definitely you get a lot more efficient with experience.
Can we get a glimpse on your future projects? I guess that now you're in the more than the maintenance phase. You're in the feature addition phase of the RetroTINK 4K. You just released version 1.1.0, I think, at the time we recorded this video. And do you have already a clear view, more or less, on what you want to improve, where you want to go? More, I don't know, video processing. It's kind of hard when you test the device to see the gaps or what could be added as features that are definitely missing. Downscaling comes very often as something that is requested, but it's probably a niche in the niche. So I don't know what's the effort in terms of development. Do you already know, do you have a path with things that you want to implement in the next weeks, months, years?
I think so. You know, it's a complicated question. You know, I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I have a lot of, you know, again, going back to the one-man show comment, you know, it's not really a one-man show because I got so many people that are willing to help test this and give feedback and say, hey, this doesn't work, or we need this feature. So there's, you know, as that happens, the list just gets longer and longer. And I think I'm at the point where I would say that the 4K is probably going to be the last major piece of hardware, or could very well be the last piece of hardware I ever make. I think this is kind of like, at least for me, kind of the end game for where I started to, you know, hey, I'm happy with everything I've built. So I don't think I'll be putting on new hardware, but in terms of software features for the 4K and for the 5X too, you know, to the extent that things that can be put on, I'll try to do it. But I would say there's a pretty long list of features on the 4K that I want to do. I think, you know, I don't know if, you know, just yesterday I was tweeting about improving the sample detection. So I was trying to get Saturn working. Saturn was it was a tricky beast because it's got multiple base sample rates, unlike every other console. So that's tricky. And the video quality from the console isn't that great, which makes analyzing the signal harder. That's definitely something I want to do. There's definitely, you know, better image processing, better CRTFX, something I want to do. I think the motion adaptive deinterlacer, I think the composite decoding, I think can also be improved. I think there's some architectural improvements in the scaler that can be done. You know, Extrems is, I don't know if you know Extrems, but he can probably understand the French portion of this. He's the legendary GameCube developer, but yeah, he has like 10 things that, yeah, he's always bugging me about. Everything from basically, like you said, a better scalar architecture that may downscale better. It's called a tiled frame buffer that may lead to a better downscaler, to better upscaling of GameCube games. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of things. I think it's going to be just, you know, just keeping up with fixing bugs and adding features to the 4K is probably going to keep me busy for years. You know, the PC side is still largely unexplored. You know, I have some very basic support for PCs, you know, the common DOS resolutions and, you know, VGA, super VGA and that stuff. But I would say the PC side is still pretty immature. That's going to take some time. Yeah, there's some tricks with S video, I think. Okay. Especially for consoles that only output S video, I think there's some stuff that we can do there to make the image quality much better. There's another thing that I was planning on doing. But yeah, the list, there's always stuff.
Yeah. I can imagine that it's absolutely endless, and you have endless lists of edge cases that can be handled in terms of signal processing. Before saying that you will never develop a hardware piece before, we have a suggestion actually from one of our followers.
Sure.
Could you please ask my Chi if he could buy a dedicated downscaling device that takes HDMI to analog inputs? I already have a name for that. It could be called the RetroTINK /2 to divide the resolution, or /5. Like they divide the resolution, take a PS5 and put it on a CRT. You see? Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, you know, I would say, you know, let me backtrack a little bit. I would say I don't really want to build hardware in the sense of, you know, it was a lot of work. It's a lot of work to basically build something and then put it into production and all the quality checks, all the design for manufacturing, even building the case. It was just kind of overwhelming. I would say, you know, stuff like a dedicated downscaler is stuff that I'm interested in. You know, one of the things I was related to the downscaler I keep thinking about is, you know, not only just downscaling, but outputting like good quality composite, good quality S video from HDMI. I would be interested in these projects, but maybe they would just be more like collaborative community in the sense that I put out stuff and then people can play with it versus me selling it. Because it's, when you have to sell a product versus doing something that, that's more open, there's a lot less support and a lot less obligation for that. And I think that might be the approach I want to take, because I think just, supporting the stuff that I am currently selling is already like overwhelming.
Yeah. I can fully understand, especially it's not your main activity. It comes on top. So yeah, I can definitely understand.
Yeah.
And you're not busy enough. So you're now also participating in the Mars project.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Is it possible to know more or less what's your involvement in this project? Does it connect in any way to the RetroTINK environment and ecosystem, or is it completely separated from that?
It's completely separate. So I would say currently I'm more of I'm basically an advisor on how to build the video processing side. I don't think it makes sense, both in terms of engineering as well as for marketing for someone to buy a Mars device. It's just very expensive, and then have to buy a RetroTINK 4K and connect the two. I don't think that's a great user experience, because first of all, you have two pieces of hardware that you need to buy and figure out how to make work together, but it's also more complicated design. So I'd say on the Mars side, the goal is to basically get Mars to output 4K video natively with relatively similar effects. I think that's a much better value and a much better user experience.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so reusing concepts of engineering and signal processing that you learned through the RetroTINK creation into another project, basically. So yeah, consulting.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty excited to see where that goes, because I think, I was really, the one thing that I really loved about the Pocket, and I know I hated on analog, for many years, but then I got the Pocket, I was like, this thing's incredible, is that it's just like plug and play. It's a finished product. You just pick it up, I think having a consoleized device that works like that, I think would be pretty amazing for people. You can do that with the analog products now, but aside from the Pocket, which runs a lot of stuff, currently the analog products are all mostly basically one function, right? The jailbreaks aside, but having a very powerful platform that handled all this arcade stuff as well as all these console cores would, I think, be really great for people.
Sounds like the dream of all of us nerds. Yeah. Sounds absolutely perfect. We're getting closer to the end of our interview. Will you have an advice for aspiring creators, people that didn't go already the extra mile and started building something? Do you have an advice on those who are looking to follow and create their own retro gaming technology, or any technology that could inspire them to do that?
I think the most important thing is basically you should always do something that you care about. I would say one of the things that I think doesn't work out as well is, just from my own personal experience, my personal life experience, and then seeing other people, is that, if you're a young engineer, you're a aspiring engineer, and your only experience is, hey, I got a job because I had to get a job and I'm going to do the work that I'm assigned to, you never end up learning a lot, because you're not really personally invested. If you really want to, take the next step, you really have to find something that you're passionate about. And then once you find that, it could be retro gaming, or it could be like a pool pump. I don't know. I'm just saying that because my pool pump broke and I need to and the controller's whack, and I was like, hey, maybe I can build a better one. But yeah, it just has to be something you care about. And from there, just don't be afraid to do stuff, right? Don't be afraid to fail. Like, no one's going to laugh at you if you build something, whether it's a piece of software or your old circuit board that doesn't work. Because I guarantee you, your first 10 tries, you'll probably end up with crap. But, eventually, even though you build many failures, you learn a lot from them. And as long as you keep going at it and keep an open mind, are not afraid to learn new things, not afraid to do research, and not afraid to put the time in, you will learn and you will improve. And then, you'll end up with something great. And I think that's really the key. It's just is persistence and doing something you care about. And there's no magic trick to it. It's just like a lot of it's hard work. It's basically hard work and inspiration, right? You got to have the two together.
Sounds absolutely like a perfect conclusion to that for me. Do you have maybe a few words in French for our retro gaming community?
Well, first of all, thank you for inventing the SCART, the SCART connection, which we all love. As much hate as we get, it's kind of saved a lot of our lives. Um, I would say, yeah. I mean, thank you for all the support, and and not just not just the French community, but all over the world. I'm surprised that how international the retro gaming community is, and actually, it feels like the retro gaming community is very much like I feel like the European area is very has it overrepresented, not in a bad sense, but there's like a lot of Europeans really interested in retro gaming. And that was one of the things that kind of surprised me as an ignorant American, is that how big the European world was. So I'm really grateful for the support from that side, because I without that kind of support, none of these RetroTINK products would be possible. So thank you.
Mike, thanks for your time. Thanks for your insight. I hope to see you soon. And thanks for taking the time to talk with us.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. Hope I answered all the questions to the best of my ability. But yeah, thank you, and thank your viewers for having me and taking the time to listen to my rambling. I really appreciate that.
It was great. And to everyone who watched this video, I thank you all for staying until the end. You can join our Discord community server, which is linked in the description below. You can join also Mike's community directly in the same description. And I hope to see you next time. Ciao.
Goodbye.